Activity for na tubu wone biodiversity nang livelihood is kola jang chesino yang inanga tubu wone kam se kam interview ngis nen chesino taking ata isama pata chen number 1 ka ngata nge ngata livelihood na biodiversity nang ka chos relationship chik du yamani del jik du te pata chu chesino teni ngis pe ka khete nang ngata ka chos action ne mani ngata last dik chosti ngata biodiversity na gyurja changes gyomdu tyo pata chusno sumpa o khetena ngata nge mi gune samba o chidu conservation school conservation shocks la tyo ngata pata chusno
Interview conduct chua samula nga ta mani simple process nga ta follow chu chesino hala kuma khetana nga ta questionnaire ji prepare chu chesino tene ngis pa khetana nga ta carry out chua samula nga ta ngi identify chu chesino ka mi nga ta interview nen chesen tene kazu ge nen chesen hala kazu na yo no ki type of interview ka just type interview ji nen yang process of interview yang do and don't seek follow chu chesino
interview conduct chosen ngata e topic khachi ngata cover shungen cheseno जैसे कि year of experience teachers ala years of experience na ka ngata mi gun ka mi ngata interview ne te o khetana cham lo song in na last just te year of experience teachers tene khone samba ji dukhala modern technology nangun me technology gun na tene yang ka chus gyurja re khona thong ngata lo but ka ne loina nga tene yang khone family we sambaji du khone khwe last pochi chot ote ka sambaji du khala tene yang khone ka zuk eco friendly practices shikchwa nakato te antyo khetana ka onje te teachers
tene ngerang one interview khetanang ka zu nen che senok sena ka zu hala tene goma khanang tanga tai type of interview khetanang nga tai semi structure interview borche sala tai ki nga tang ona freedom yon hala ki yang question jik et chuna dictate jane nga tai te chos type of questionnaire ji nga tai prepare chu che senok thingmera tene ngispa oinokle nga ta process of interview hala nga ta process book nga ta flow khetna ka juk sha borin zen hala koma khran ta ngira ngun na na rang introduce chu che seno thing mera te nga ta ngispa nok le nga ta pata chu che seno ki nga khone livelihood po khetna ka jo depend du hala biodiversity ka ti nga ta pata chu che seno thing mera tene sumpa khetna khone historical perspective ta che seno thing mera ka ju ge nga ta butka ne loina nga yang nga ta impact on to khala livelihood na tene maning demo justing an che seno thing mera khone chi mol na nga ta demo justing an che seno tene sumpa oi no le nga ta do nang don't stick nga ta follow che seno chikpa ta nga ta polite so te nga ta teaches seno tene nga ta question lan chik tis te nga ta yang jaldi jaldi yang question teaches mano tene sumpa on no kina khone answer tangin men na ketna nga ta insist choches mano hawa tene yang open ended questionnaire nga ta prepare choches no tene ngena su su nga ta interview nga ta taman dix te nok sena nga ta nge interview farmer ji ka fishermen te met kya pa tene boards men na met kya hala tene forest guard je taman dix te no tene vegetable vendor chuma chong kanani le ji kani ne nan dix te no mahodang met kya ecology shi kani ne nan dix te no yang minor re kani nga ta ne nan dix te no thingmena tene thu ne interview nen chartes tina thu ne discussion borches tene reflect choches tene nga ta chi nga ta interview na nga ta jangches stops jo na tyo ke ta nga ta notes choches thingmena tene interpret choches chi nga ta findings stops na tene nga ta report diches thingmena rang munne tene interview nen jane hala chunma chong kanji kane nga tai aneli ya ajang ne ji kane nga tai interview ne na chi tang rang muni it's of question dik tin understand no just sing nga tai ngira chunma chong ste lo cham song te teachers tene ngira chunma o khetnang ka ne yunga chite hala tene sumpa o khetnang daksa chunma ka jugri badumi gune tene mulla ka jugri badat pin chete tene yang ngira tus nang ngira abal le na amal le tus na tsakazu kazu gyujari ngira nga thong ngira ngona ngira samara gyujari yon stok zerkan pati o teachers tene yang ngira choks ni kazu ge I ngira profession bala ngira chunma chonches pachi ve important no yang future na nga ta thu wone chi fe I profession bo nen go sok zdala tius ko la nga ta I interview tinan dixten no chosla tene ngerang une jab interview ne chitang hala jingbat paji kani tene ngerang une isos question dik tin han dixten hala jese ngerang una chi gyurja jik thong ngerang une tus na ngerang une abale na memele tusena kazu gyurja dik thong zete hala tene jingbat pela sinanga tene ngispa khetena tene ngira samba jik sal pina ki ha tanga jingba de las bo phangste yang la shi choches raksans de sambe yong sa zete tene yong na ka to chief ya zete hala tene sumpa khetenang tene nga ta jingba de lasika kazuge asar charu khala nga ta namzao kheta namze kani hala tyo teaches no tene jipa khetenang nga ta salan na nga ta bichikun khetenang kazu idil chwa zete hala tene yang organic farming ngira gyusyod na ka tu ngira nge thuksam buchi in zete organic farming ka teo ketna matai tinang dixteno I changma
Activity 4 interview inang atai Vandana Shiva khung khetenang Indian scholars environment activist shigna eco feminist shigjux teno tene khone interview khetenang atange reference fianga tangone stand ka ne khetenang khone che biodiversity khetena isam important eno te skola khone interview jik ino tene yunga tang samme stand.
We need to shift away from the fiction of growth that allows the takeover of the Earth's resources by a handful of corporations. We can protect biodiversity, have more food, and have more happiness. Biodiversity is the real wealth of the poor, because in the absence of capital, it still provides their needs for food, for fiber, for fuel, for everything they need. I work and live in areas of India where there's no cash transaction at all, but there's no hunger because people's fields are fertile, the biodiversity is rich. We have defined wealth in terms of finance, and fictitious finance at that. The real wealth is biodiversity. And now that giant corporations can see there is real wealth in biodiversity, they are creating new instruments to steal the last resource of the poor. One of the phenomena underway in the world is patenting of life forms. And this is leading to biopiracy, piracy of indigenous knowledge and biodiversity. We have fought 3 cases on biopiracy: the neem, the basmati, the wheat. We have now documented 5,000 such cases for India alone. Africa, Latin America, wherever there is biodiversity wealth in the hands of the poor, it's being grabbed. Like the land is being grabbed, biodiversity is being grabbed through patents. This grab will leave the poor really poor. Without cash, you can still meet your needs. Without biodiversity, the poor are being pushed to hunger, which is why today in India, 1 million children are dying annually because of lack of food, because they have no biodiversity. And 1/4 of India is hungry. It's the destruction of biodiversity that is at the root of hunger. India very consciously built itself as a biodiversity civilization. Our national poet Tagore had said that what makes India distinctive is our culture comes from the forest, and our teacher is biodiversity. Today, biodiversity is under severe threat. Our farms were full of trees. Today, as the green revolution is spread, where the tractor gets primacy over the trees, hedgerows are cut down, trees are destroyed, and I see places where I have grown up, which used to have very high biodiversity density, today becoming monocultures of just rice, or just wheat, or just sugarcane. And this is in the cultivated areas. But even in the uncultivated areas, you are seeing a very, very large-scale desertification underway under the combination of the pressure of climate change, as well as the neglect of biodiversity, where concrete is given primacy, cars are given primacy, not biodiversity. And I think till we wake up to the fact that we have to live in biodiversity-based economies, we will not be able to maintain a livable planet for the human species. I think at this point of humanity being at the precipice of deliberate extinction imposed on itself, we need to remember a few things. The first is that nature is not just a resource for exploitation. She is just not the property of the mining companies or the biotech industry or the water privatizing companies. Nature has her integrity, her sovereignty, and her rights. And this, in my view, is the revolution the world is waiting for. Thank goodness it is happening. Thank goodness, both at the level of civic movements as well as at the level of governments like Bolivia, the rights of Mother Earth are on the global political agenda. But if we recognize that the Earth has rights, then we all receive water from her. We receive food from her. We receive air from her. Anything that is received as a gift from the earth and from nature has to be a commons. It cannot be privatized. That is why privatization of life forms through patents, or water through privatization schemes driven by the World Bank, or the privatization of the atmosphere and the air through carbon trading and emissions trading are all illegal and illegitimate in a legal framework based on the Earth's rights. And the third most important shift we have to make is everyone is being pushed into thinking that out of growth comes well-being for humans. But if that had to be the case, America has had the highest agricultural growth over decades. It is the country with the highest level of disease related to food, the highest level of obesity. Quite clearly, economic growth and well-being are not linked. Well-being comes from something else. And that's why we must celebrate Bhutan, which has defined gross national happiness as the aspiration for a nation, not just for individuals. We need to shift away from the fiction of growth that allows the takeover of the Earth's resources by a handful of corporations, pushing more and more people to hunger and thirst, more and more people to poverty, and the planet to a very, very vulnerable and fragile position. We can protect biodiversity, have more food, and have more happiness. Of course, the greedy corporations will have less profit, and I think the planet needs their profits to decrease. Well, of course, if every commercial could have an anti-commercial, that would be the ultimate dream world for democracy, because right now the same corporations that control the material world control the shaping of our minds through the media, through advertising. The damage being done to the world outside is being done to our minds. As children are taken out of nature and put in front of computers, there are now studies, for example in Germany, showing that the part of the brain that allows children to feel care, to feel compassion, to feel empathy, that part of the brain is dying. So we are literally creating human beings incapable of connecting, incapable of caring. The industrial system of corporate rule is based on producing human beings who lose their capacity to be human. Our challenge is to reclaim our capacity to be human and to be part of the earth. How do we do this education? By just reconnecting from the smallest level to the largest level. Because we are wired to be earth citizens, the forgetting is a short-term phenomena if we decide to remember that we are part of the earth's biodiversity and we need to celebrate this.
Ngata ndaksa video stakan bukhetena ngata interview reference if ngata video stas tenok pa tenen khons kundun su yux tenok sena Vandana Shiva jete Indian scholar jekhala eco-feminist jignam tenang environmentalist yux tenok hala tene khoni ika mola merai ki ngata biodiversity ukhetang cham jingati fia khakchanin jete hala ngalwa channel la chang met nang khwela khetena ngata land dot kya khona la chuyut kya lungspot kya zitno sa the land dot te khona kharji za che se totpa skang che se khona fia psychiatric yo te nok zet no hala tene da I tu sika hala nga ta jap nga ta development ma mangpo chin yo te nok pa te tu sika nga ta ngone nature lamani sta me nuk zet no so anche zena nga ta building gun khetena ma signa ma takpo nok zer kanji gadi khuna ma takpo nok zer kanji nga ta notion ji gut te duk zet jab ki nga ta US nok pa US po khetena nga ta developed nation hala ji nga ta thia nok pa magar zumo changma khetena American na mangpo yong duk zet no jese obesity rumpo chache zendo tene nga ta samba ta na khetena nga ta del ji yot no azena hala nga ta develop chana ke to nga ta skit pollution no zer kan bote o manok zet no la jabki Bhutan na khetena nga ta happiness index zete khone siano pal connecting miguna isam nga ta development ka khone dan mata khone as a environment biodiversity khedena ma khone respect joste ma khone conserve joste ma thunte duga nok zete no sa te fia biodiversity khedena mani khakchan ji no nga te fia zete khone I interview na molte no tenna chosla thugun ne rangunang interview ne jesno na chosla thingmera
for interview tene ina nga tange interview jingen ches no hala ngerang ngone interview jingen te yo doba agar mane na yo ngerang ngone zix te yo doba ki ata tv ka hala interview ta no pa news channel su na ngata interview amna ote sos la ngata interview jik ngatange nenche se no thingmera tene I interview ne na chi sangerang ngon mani chapses mano yu khete na ngata chum fe jangche se me ngata jangche se fe moka jik no pa ngata jangche se no in through thingmera tene interview ne na chi tangera ngerang ngona spera khachik nangena borches mama khachane no tene ka so spera unna na borches no sene kingera ngone questionnaire chono pa ngolanga ta interview jingne na sangolanga ta question dinga ta prepare chono pa tene o the questionnaire ba prepare chosa ninga ta close ended questionnaire mani me borches so ki yes or no zina onale hale manokle ze sheshika mani questionnaire o so prepare mani me choche sala tiese na ngata oto shi questionnaire je jab chua ji tang ki na ngata answer ba khete na mani yunjik man thobam no khone kan ngata yunjik man spera pata chama no pa te fya ngati open ended questionnaire borches ta ki ngata khone kan suggestion jang thoben spera ji mang pek pata chin o te fya ngati open ended questionnaire ji ngata borche no hala tene khete na ngata yang I questionnaire bo flexible borches hala ki jab ngata questionnaire boti achi ta ngata tayang ngata khone kan isuk shi response shi ngata thopche dukhala samna te os questionnaire ngata add chungyan chi shikhala te isuk shi ngata borche sno tene ngata I questionnaire board nun ti achi ta hala interview ne na ngata do and don't sing ngata follow chogo sno sa kazuk chalak chogo sano kazuk chalak chogo samano sete den kazuk chalak chogo sano zana ki ngata polite ngata man demo juste khona tije sala tene ngata ngola ta introduction tang chis ngola introduction tang chis ngi nga inle tene nga school in silte inle tene nga yulni inle tene ngi you interview if enen ten le zeting tinga tangola introduce to just like in khon ngata ngem po comfortable chala hala tene yang ngata ngata khonyam po yang ngata khona answer ka shi ngata tangin me do hala tene ngata zabardasti choche mano ki zira le molang zete ze mazera sig ngata khona tangin me na ketan next question ne ka ngata directly move chajeno ngirang munne interview ne na jiktang ngirang ona ka language nang ngirangon comfortable yun na onna language nang ngirangon interview ne na jache sinokle English na ne nang dixteno ladak se Spain na ne nang dixteno yang Hindi nang ne nang dixteno magar jab nga ta video chwa chita ngirangon subtitles poke dena English na borazadle
ne activity for nga ta activities kun jo sar teste ne jume ka nga ta reflection jo che sinok ne thu ne reflect jo che sinok ki kazu nga ta livelihood hala contribute jur khala ya to shik dwa ki promote jur khala biodiversity ukhetena teningis pa ukhetena ne ta se modern practices kun ne kazu impact jur khala biodiversity ka tene sumpa oi no le ki nga ta dang de thu ne generation ne attitude puchi dukhala nga ta livelihood ka ukhetena nga ta resources ka ukhetena nga ta sustain jo livelihood la